the Real Ag Lounge here on the trade show floor, having a great time. A lot of fun here, interacting with the audience, getting to see a lot of our guests face to face. Really, really a great time. Our next guest is Cam Dahl, president of Cereals Canada. Cam, how's it going?
Oh, it's going great. Great to be here, and thank you for the opportunity. Although JP stole my line.
What was his line?
I was going to say this has been, the highlight of my year so far, and
yeah.
He used it already. So
like I said to JP, the year is still young. Yeah. There's a lot of miles to cover yet. So you've been kind of following me around. We've been going from province to province to province here on the Traveling Road Show. A lot of discussions, man.
It's a really interesting time in Canadian agriculture and Western Canadian agriculture, and whether it's on the marketing front or the policy front, there's a lot of balls in the air right now.
Okay, we saw the Stats Can report last week. Durum acres, I'm going to get this wrong. I can't remember. Big drop.
I think 25% down.
Okay, so big drop. A lot of that has to do with the fact we have old crop. Right, and then the fact that people are not too confident that we're going to be able to ship this year. What is the update on the country of origin legislation issues with Italy?
So right now we're not seeing a significant shift in Italy, but I think it's coming. And of course, then the question is when. I really do see that Italy coming back into the market in the later parts of this crop year.
Because they have to, or why? What's driving that? All of a sudden you're up,
quality. It's the demand for quality, and of course that's not going to happen in time for spring seeding, and that's not going to change the 25% drop. But in durum, it's not just Italy; it's also Algeria, which is our. Italy's number one or Algeria's number one. Those are our two biggest markets, and Algeria hasn't really been buying either. So it's a double shot on the durum front.
On my mom's side, my grandfather Mahalko, he grew up in a real dry, traditional dry land, sandy soil, middle to Palliser Triangle. He made a lot of money durum and fallow. Of course, it's not an advisable rotation today, but durum. My perception has always been like this contrarian play where a durum grower is a durum grower, and I got 3 years of inventory, and when it comes up, I am going to make boatloads of money. Are we in, could there be a contrarian play for durum growers? Are you that confident, Cam, this is going to be fixed?
We're not quite there yet, but I do think it's going to turn around, and I also think the reason I brought up Algeria is I think Algeria is going to begin to turn around there too, and again that driver is going to be on the quality side, especially from some of the private buyers in Algeria. So I am seeing that shift. It's just not happening now.
Okay, I'm going to ask you a question. Where are we at with the Saudi Arabia? Do they still have shipments cut off?
Absolutely, yeah. And if you happen to come across the tenders from Saudi Arabia, they'll say option origin except from Canada.
Right on it.
Right on it.
No, thank you. No chancey, Mr. Whalen. We do not want any of your durum.
It's you can or anything else. It's you can whether it's a barley tender. Of course, that used to be a bit of a barley market for us.
They weren't buying. How much were they actually buying?
The amount of tenders, I think they put out tenders for 1 million tons in the last while. So that's quite a few tenders that say optional origin except for Canada.
But we're making inroads. We have a huge advantage into the Asian market with CP, TPP now. If we compare the Canadian export situation to maybe, let's say, the United States.
Absolutely, it is an interesting time in the markets. We have, in this crop year, so from August 1st on, we've set record numbers this year. We have never moved this much wheat as we've moved now. And that's going into Asia. That's going into China. Increased demand all over Asia, but China is a big one in that mix too.
So even though our relationship with China is, let's be honest, it's on some thin ice, so to speak. It's interesting at this point. Every day is a new development in this 50-page book or 50-chapter book. Has it impacted at all our exports from your house?
Not yet, but of course all of these things are, the reason we're shipping so much more into China is because of politics, right? And so this is all being driven by politics, and that's not as certain as economic conditions.
Okay,
and so China's uncertain. So the answer to your question is no, it's not yet. We're shipping a great deal of wheat into China. but that can change fairly quickly.
Oh, okay, so but why not? Like, I'm confused because in the U.S. example, the U.S. and China battling it out, China, basically said no thank you to soybeans. They had another supplier being Brazil.
Yeah.
China could find pulse crops or cereals. They could find those other locations. Why has China not stopped? What is there a lesson to be learned there? Why not?
So China is actually the world's largest wheat producer. So China grows a lot of wheat. They need that higher protein wheat from Canada, Australia, and the U.S. to blend in for some of their quality flours. So if they're not buying from the U.S., their alternatives are Australia and Canada, and Australia's had droughts.
Yeah.
And so if they're not buying from the U.S. for that higher protein wheat, they only have one option.
How much time do you spend thinking about what we're up against potentially long-term with the Black Sea region?
Quite a bit.
Because I always think back, I think it was about a year ago, talking to Marlene Borsch from Mercantile Consulting here at this show, and her talking about how, boy, we have some big-time long-term threats and challenges coming from that region.
We really do. And I think if you look over the last 10 years at what wheat exports in Australia and Canada and the U.S. and Canada have done, is the U.S. has fallen off a cliff on wheat exports. Australia is down significantly. And Canadian exports are steady to slightly rising. And the reason for that is we're not competing directly in the same market as the Black Sea. So we need to keep that advantage. We're in a different quality spectrum. And we need to ensure that we keep that part of the world market and not compete direct head-to-head, because, as I said, if you look at U.S. hard red winter exports, they're not competing well.
Okay, so why does a country like Russia have the opportunity to move into our quality spectrum if they say use more of our varieties, or is it really climatic?
It's partly it's mostly climatic when you look at especially the regions of Russia and Ukraine that are close to the coast. And so right now, most of their wheat is trucked in, and they don't really have that infrastructure to move from the interiors of the country. But if you go further north, or move it to Kazakhstan, for example, in our particular sort of niche of the market, I look at Kazakhstan as the future competitive. It's basically like the prairies. Okay,
right now in Canada we have this whole value creation discussion going on. Has Cereals Canada come out yet on your official position?
We haven't, and the reason we haven't is of course we have all parts of the value chain inside.
Oh, absolutely. I'm sure you have very interesting discussions at Cereals Canada.
We have had some pretty interesting board meetings, and in fact they're really productive because it's a safe place for the various parts of the chain to come together and say, okay, how do we move forward on this? And as I said, it's part of the value is to be able to have that without having a public discussion. So we're not quite there for the public discussion yet.
Okay. So, but you will have at some point this year?
Yeah, I'm hoping that we will.
Okay. Awesome. Well, and Cam, you've been to Farm Tech almost I run into you every year here.
This is one I don't want to miss. This is a great show.
It's one thing is it's the facility. It is amazing.
And the people.
Well, they're pretty good too. Yeah, they're
well,
good.
Some of them.
Yeah,
most
Pete,
of them.
Pete, I saw you talking to Pete earlier.
Yeah, Pete's not bad.
Yeah. For a guy that knows a lot about winter wheat, he's pretty good. Hey, Cam, president of Cereals Canada, really, really appreciate it, man.
Always a privilege, Shaun.
And thanks. You always say yes. Cam is a guy that you say, hey, Cam, can we talk to you? Absolutely. You never say no, and I really do appreciate that.
Anytime.